and welcome to The German Guy Reviews. We don't talk much about the lives of our grandparents or old people in general, do we? Well, I want to change that. Old people are awesome and deserve recognition. So I thought today we look at a movie that shows the life of a typical old married couple. Having lots and lots of sex. My life is hell. We start the movie by watching a woman named Inge, whose name I only know because I had to look it up, as with any other name in this movie, ironing some pants. This is going to be one hell of a ride, my friends. She takes the train and brings the pants to a man named Carl.
Carl!
Carl! Carl! Carl! Carl!
After she has given him his pants back, they start humping like some Viagra-infested rabbits. And we got to see everything. And I mean everything. It is interesting to know that one of the main differences between German and American movie viewing is that the censorship authorities over here have no problem with sex, but with violence, where it is the other way around in America. For example, The Wolf of Wall Street got an age rating of 13. I was in the cinema and expecting to hear the sound of wanking behind my right ear. You used him. We see Inge and her husband Werner coming home from a funeral. There are some boring scenes of Inge doing some work in the kitchen and kaboom, next naked senior butt. When Inge helps to wash his hair in the bathtub, she suddenly starts to want some action. Thankfully, I don't have to watch two elders having sex twice in under 5 minutes, as we switch to a scene in which Carl brings a jacket of his for stitching. Oh, I believe he wants to stitch some other things too. With his penis. Oh yeah. So yeah, the story of this movie is about a woman that has an affair after 30 years of marriage. And it's easy to see why she is having an affair, given what life full of boredom she is living. For example, the show Germany's Most Exciting Train Station counts as a thrill-full evening with her husband. It's almost as boring as watching this movie. Inge is having sex, this time with her husband, and I like to remind you, I have to see everything. Yes, I know what you are trying to tell me, the human body is beautiful in all its forms, now can you please stop shoving it in my face? The next day, Werner tells Inge that he has to go away for a few days visiting his son, and you know what that means. Motorized bicycle racing. That's a weird sport. But of course, Inge is only going there because Carl is also present. They ran to his car as it starts to rain heavily and they start to kiss. Yeah, I will later talk about this. Romance. She then is brought home by Carl and walks down the street. Painfully slow. I am 100% convinced that scene was necessary for the structural functionality of the plot. That or 1.5 hours needed to be killed somehow. And so the pattern that is so insanely boring starts to repeat itself, over and over again. She meets Carl, she feels remorse, she meets Carl, she feels remorse. All the while her husband is completely oblivious to the fact that something is not right with his wife when she starts crying uncontrollably or laughs about a crappy joke for a solid minute. You know, if I was the husband, I would be worried that my loved one is starting to have some mental issues. Like she is about to execute a plan to make the entire world believe that I kidnapped and murdered her, and because of various circumstances will be forced to have sex with Neil Patrick Harris. Do you believe Barney will tap that? Later they are bathing naked in a lake, and you will never guess what they are about to do next. Maybe they are going to have a very thoughtful discussion about Catholic celibacy in the modern age. No, they are porking, of course. The movie finally remembers that it has to move forward at some point, so we see Inge telling her daughter about her affair. So the daughter suggests, why not just keep it a secret and don't let Werner know? What's the problem? What's the problem? What kind of advice is that, asshole? Sorry to be that guy, but cheating is wrong, period. A relationship, especially marriage, is built on trust and a commitment to forever love one another. If you don't love your husband anymore, that's fine. But you have to divorce him then. Or you tell him the truth. Everything else is just deceiving. When your husband finds out after 5 or 10 years, it's going to be way worse for him than it is now. Does the daughter actually think there's anything defensible in what her mother is doing? To be fair, the movie lets Inge later do the right thing, but that it brings this up as actually being somehow a legitimate option baffles me. Pfft, feminism. Am I right, guys? Am I right? As I said before, the film remembers how an ethical compass works and lets Inge confess to her husband. And big surprise, Werner throws some very harsh words at her while Inge tries to defend herself in the worst manner imaginable. Her basic arguments being, well, and, you know. This is just such a soap opera. You had the perfect opportunity to let the characters say words with actual depth and weight behind them, and you blow it completely. But there's actually a good reason for that. See, this movie had no script, meaning the actors were ordered to just improvise and they made shit up on the spot. Although a couple of scenes actually feel very natural and authentic for this reason, most of it is just delivered awful. Because they just don't know what they could say. They have nothing to work with. I constantly have the feeling that I am watching a cheap reality TV show and not an actual movie. Now, while we have gone off track anyway, let's talk about the so-called romance between Inge and Carl. It's not love. All that Carl and Inge ever did was having sex. They look at each other with twinkling eyes, but we have no dialogue prior to that. Think about Titanic, but imagine the scenes where Jack saves Rose's life, or where they dance together, or where they share any form of human emotion were cut out and we were just left with the sex scenes. That describes the relationship between the both of them perfectly. She doesn't love him, she was just desperate and horny. She was trapped in her awful life and would go to anyone who would give her a little bit excitement. There's a moment at the lake when Inge and Carl try to have a conversation, but there's more silence than words. This is exactly what's going on in your marriage, woman. The only difference is that you make yourself believe that you are once again in love. This movie is from the Twilight School of love. It thinks if we show people just staring into each other's faces long enough, that counts as love. At no point in the movie we are shown why they are supposed to fit together. It's by all means not his personality, because he has none. This is simply not a stable relationship, because all that you do is play the hide your bratwurst game. If that first excitement is gone, you are left with boredom again. Congrats, movie makers! You have turned something that was supposed to be a whimsical story about love and life into a tragedy. This love will go down the same road as her first marriage. Anyway, her husband later demands, after he has calmed down a bit, that Inge finally makes a decision. So she goes to get some relationship advice from her daughter again. This is like asking for diet advice from a McDonald's employee. Because that's the person you should talk to right now. And I am right, because her daughter wonders why her mother told her husband in the first place. Is it possible that you are one of those famous lizard people in human costume? I am really curious. After some pointless scenes with Inge and Werner celebrating the birthday of her grandchild, where the movie is hilariously trying to make me believe there's still a competition going on between Werner and Karl, she ultimately leaves him. The same night, Inge gets a call from her daughter, telling her Werner is dead, presumably committed suicide. This movie is so manipulative, and it uses old people for its advantage. It's the equivalent of shooting puppies to get attention. It's such a forced tragic moment so we can have a final crime scene. It's disgusting. Yes, I understand. I know what they were trying to do. Old people are just people with desires and feelings like everybody else. But you know, I already knew that. It doesn't tell me anything new. It's just, this movie thinks because it has an original idea, it can get away with bad storytelling. There are million stories like this in books and movies, and just because it's now with seniors doesn't make it special. What the movie does somewhat good, on the other hand, is that its story mostly gets told through facial expressions. There's a minimum of dialogue, but this gets overdone too much, so that it ends up being nothing more than a bunch of staring in each other's eyes romantically. It doesn't have any clever or meaningful dialogue, and when it actually did have the opportunity to have words with weight behind them, it just blows it in a disappointing manner that even succeeds the Star Wars prequels. This movie leaves you numb. You don't gain anything, you are not moved, you are simply passing time. And you wish for anything to happen just so it doesn't go on like this any longer. Which, ironically, fits the main character's life very well. Cloud 9 is not a good movie. It's just any other soap opera where the characters in their life are completely interchangeable. There's no reason to have them be seniors, other than to let them stand out from the crowd a bit. That would at least be bearable if it wasn't also incredibly boring. The only reason why it became so famous around here was because it advertised itself well. Next time, we travel to the fantastical realm of animation. The German guy, out and auf Wiedersehen.